Hello, well a little while ago I popped a video up on carving wooden birds, and the little one I did, I've actually painted it since, so here's my blue tit. Anyway, I thought in this video I would just run through the painting. So I've actually got a little flock of birds now, got quite a few. I have a bullfinch, so I've just make like paper patterns for these, and I've got a couple more blue tits. I have a thrush, which is there. Again, a little pattern for my thrush. And I have a robin. It's funny, when you start looking at these birds, you realise all the beaks are different and things. And then this one of my friends thought it was a crow. I've tried to slim the nose down. Anyway, it is a woodpecker, climbing its tree and pecking away. I see these in Knoll Park quite a lot, so I thought I must do a woodpecker. But yeah, I mean, I've just been taking pictures, you know, off the web, where you can get the colouring and what they look like. And I've got a bird book with sort of like a field guide to birds, so that helps getting a sort of idea of the shapes and the colours. I'm probably not deadly accurate or anything, well I'm not, but it's a bit of fun. So yeah, painting, get on with that today, and putting legs on as well. So I've been making some little stands, and to do that all I did was took a bit of firewood, cut it down with the axe in half, and you get two nice little naturally formed stands. What I'm going to do first of all is do the eyes, and I've got some little glass beads. Now these are 3mm little glossy beads. They do have a hole through them, so I'll have to be careful about where I get them, you know, positioned, but I'm going to drill little eye holes and pop these beads and glue them in. So I've just been marking with a pen where the eyes are going. It's not a bad thing once you've done that to actually just look up from above and think, oh, have I got those roughly in alignment? And actually you may decide no, you want to shift them slightly, but now's the time to do it before you get too far down the road. And it's also quite a good time to do any little final bits of trimming that you might want to do. So I have been going over these, trying to define my beaks a little bit more. Anyway, I have then got a 3mm drill, and I'm just doing enough to sort of try and sink the bead down a bit, but not too far. And I have my little beads. I'll just do a quick test on that. Yeah, that's roughly how you want it. So you want it so that the eye is there, sticking out a bit, but not too much, because it would just look a bit artificial. Equally, you don't want it totally sunk in. I will probably sink that one a tad more. So holes all drilled, I'm going to just put a little bit of glue in the hole and drop my bead in and hope for the best. Having to press it a little bit, and I'm trying to align it so that the hole going through the bead doesn't notice too much, but that's the sort of general idea. The feet, when you look at birds' feet, they're often leaning forward slightly, so like here, going forwards, this robin. You do need to look at the actual feet for the kind of bird that you're doing, but it's worth sort of looking and just seeing how the feet seem to lie. I mean, I've got a little bird book as well, which I'm sort of using, but you'll see generally they'll go forward, and they're quite thin and light, obviously. So I've got these little like bamboo sticks, so I'm going to use those. I mean, they're quite strong. They're well, like kebab type sticks, so I think they'll be excellent. I can just cut these, drill little holes for the feet, and then glue them in, and I can mount them on a block. Taking it in centimetre, half an inch, something like that. So what I'm then going to do is take a couple of lengths of stick, which I'll make a bit longer, whoops, at the moment than I need to. And I'll just do a dry fit first of all. So I've just placed the 2 feet in without gluing at the moment. I've trimmed them, so I'm assuming I'm going to sink them in another sort of centimetre, ½ an inch. And I've just been marking on the mounting block roughly where they'll go. So again, trying to keep the drill at a similar-ish sort of angle. I'll do 2 holes. I'm sort of going in vertically with the drill and then at an angle. And it's all a bit hit and miss as to whether one gets the right sort of angle, but hopefully I can encourage, yeah, those sticks to go in. So that can get glued up now. So there you are, I have all my little birds mounted onto little bits of firewood. So I'll get on and start some painting. Now I may find that I should have left the sticking onto the bits of firewood until after I'd painted, so I may regret having stuck them down there. We'll see. The woodpecker I'm actually going to probably put somewhere else so it actually looks like it's pecking. So I haven't actually mounted this one, so at least with this one I can get round to paint it a bit more easily. For the painting, I think it's worth having a good photograph to work from, and use fairly fine, reasonable quality brush. I've got a little mixing palette here, and I'm going to start off as a general rule with the lighter colours. You don't need to mix very much at any one point, and I mean I think how you paint this partly comes down to sort of like preference. But I'm going to do the white bits around the head first. The good thing about the acrylics, you can to an extent overpaint. I know one doesn't particularly want to, but it is quite nice the way one can. One could sort of carve on all sorts of detail, but I quite like keeping it all fairly simple really. I think there's a certain sort of charm in it being a little bit sort of like rusticy. I feel the acrylics, they can look a little bit sort of synthetic or a bit artificial if you're not careful. The black in particular, and I may need to let that dry a bit more, comes down at the front. Oop, I'm far too loose and wet here. I am going to need to let that dry off, I think. Right, come back to that in a minute. I think let that go off, have a cup of tea and come back to it in a minute. While I had my paint mixed up, I did my second one, I got that underway, so I'm not wasting paint. And now I'm just going to try and paint going from the sort of eyes to the beak. And the blue tip has this quite slight distinctive little bit of marking here. It's rather nice. A very distinctive bit under there, bit of like a V shape, a beard. Come around, do the same sort of thing the other side. So I have now done 3 little blue tits, and actually I'm quite happy with the way these have turned out. So what I've tried to do here is use a number of different coloured paints, trying to keep it as natural as possible. So I've kept several shades of blue on there. I've tried fanning out my paintbrush to get like a feathered effect. I've tried to make the colours not too sort of obvious one way or the other, so they look fairly natural. But yeah, nice little family there, bit of fun. I will carry on with my other birds now. Well, I've just been experimenting doing a robin, and what I was tried initially with this one was just to use 3 colours only. So I just thought, let's keep it really simple, and with a fairly sort of globby brush I just got a brown, like a orangey red and a grey, and just did the 3 colours, and then the darker sort for the beak and the legs. But it looked a bit too sort of stark, so what I then did, I went and sort of washed it over in slightly different tones of those colours, just flaring out my brush to try and give it like a feathering effect. So I just went over, and then after that, still not convinced, and I'm not convinced now even, I went and just gave it a little like doubling over with the other brush, just to try and break up the surface. And I think like that it does begin to get a bit more where I wanted. It's all simple folk arty, and it does sort of depict a robin, but it's not quite so sort of detailed or involved. So yeah, it's a slightly different approach, but it's quite interesting just really experimenting and trying all of these things. So I'm now having a go at a sparrow, and I've just sort of popped like a simple bit of colour on. It's sort of quite effective, just like that in many respects. It's simple. I will do a bit more, I think, but it does sort of illustrate the point. I don't think you have to get too technical with the painting. So that's it with a little bit of head colour applied. Again, it's just a slab of colour. So just seeing how simple we can keep this. And here it is with a third colour applied, plus of course a beak as well, and a darker colour. So that's fairly simple, sort of, I quite like the simple approach actually. I just feel it's a bit more perhaps honest to the crude carving. It's a funny way of putting that, but it's a bit more folky, arty. I mean, I'm never going to be a great painter of birds, I fully admit that, but I think if one can get quite an interesting effect, I quite like the simplicity of the more basic colourings. Well, continuing the simplified theme, I'll let you guess what that is. Bullfinch. Well, I hope it is. I've got a picture in a book here of a bullfinch, which sort of helps a little. So again, it's a slightly interpretation. So with my brush, what I've done 2 colours. I've done a brown and then a cream, and with the brown I'm just over painting it and sort of then like smudging it with a bit of sponge, just to try and get this slightly mottled effect, which seems to work quite well all in all. Gives it a slightly more natural sort of effect, and just a little bit of sponge on there seems to also help break up the surface and make it just look a bit more natural, a bit more mottled. So with the picture of my brush, I'm actually using is a bit of wallpaper we got at home, and I thought I would copy vague terms, the wallpaper, and I'm using like a flatter and squarer brush for this one. I hope this sort of works. I'm trying to keep the paint fairly thin, so I load it on my brush and then I just dab a bit of paper, and that takes a bit of the load off the brush, which again seems to help a bit. So I think that's more or less it, trying not to overdo it too much, trying to get the sort of brush type effect there. Also trying to avoid where you get a very definite like cut off line between the 2 colours, which I don't particularly want. It gives the shape of a wing. Blurring on the head there. Yeah, well, I'll let that dry and I'll take another look at it. Well, I seem to have a woodpecker in my workshop. So that's the woodpecker done. I use a sponge quite a bit to spread the paint with that one, quite an interesting technique. Just sort of rub the paint over while it's still wet and work it in a bit. Yeah, it's Woody Woodpecker in position. I think I'll leave him there, he seems quite happy. Well, I've enjoyed doing these. So I have my little blue tit family, and then I have my redwing, And then my sparrow. A thrush coming up. That's the thrush. And the robin. What garden's not complete without a robin? Anyway, there you are. Painting birds. Good bit of fun that. And hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did doing the painting. Anyway, I may not be the best painter, I fully acknowledge, but it's good to try something a bit different and have some fun. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Who knows what will be in the next video, but subscribe and you'll find out. Okay then, bye bye.